Imagine being dropped into a medieval village with today's knowledge and technology. Could you survive 24 hours? You wake in darkness, aching from a night on a lice-infested mat. No shower, no coffee, just gritty pottage and weak ale for breakfast. By noon, your body would already be unraveling from the relentless demands. Calories would feel like a cruel joke, and unseen parasites would be lurking in every mouthful and every breath. Most people today wouldn't make it 24 hours in this world, where infection and exhaustion are daily certainties, not distant threats. But how fast would it really break you? What happens as each brutal hour stacks up? Imagine you had to eat, work, and sleep in a world without refrigeration, running water, or modern medicine. Could you survive 24 hours in medieval conditions? A peasant's breakfast in the 14th century rarely changed. A bowl of pottage made from barley or oats, sometimes thickened with beans or foraged greens, served tepid and lumpy with a hunk of coarse rye bread and a mug of weak ale. The meal arrived heavy with fiber, light on protein, and nearly absent of fat. For a modern stomach, this is a recipe for trouble. The average ration delivered 2,000 to 3,000 calories, but these came almost entirely from starch. Protein hovered at a fraction of what a sedentary adult expects today. Cheese or a scrap of salted pork might appear on feast days, but for most, animal fat was a rumor, not a staple. The bread itself brought its own risks. Rye harvested from rain-soaked fields often harbored ergot fungus. A single tainted loaf could trigger convulsions, hallucinations, or blackened limbs, symptoms that to medieval minds meant possession or a curse, but to modern medicine signaled ergotism. In wet years, entire villages reported outbreaks, with sufferers wandering the lanes in a daze or collapsing in the fields. For the first hour, the pottage sat uneasily. The fiber load, far above what most modern digestive systems encounter, began to ferment with the help of wild yeasts from the ale. Bloating, cramps, and a sudden urge to find privacy, impossible in a one-room hut, were not just likely, but almost guaranteed. By mid-morning, as the body tried to extract energy from the gruel, blood sugar started to crash. Muscle glycogen, never fully stocked in a diet this lean, drained quickly under the strain of manual labor. Weakness and lightheadedness followed, long before noon. The ale, safer than the water, provided a few extra calories and dulled the edge of hunger, but it was low in alcohol and nutrients. By midday, the calorie gap between what was eaten and what was burned in the fields yawned wider. Medieval peasants learned to ignore the gnaw of hunger. A modern visitor would feel it as a kind of panic. The body, denied fats and proteins, began to break down muscle for fuel. Every step felt heavier, every motion slower. The promise of another bowl of pottage at sunset was small comfort when the day's work had only just begun. Imagine stepping into a medieval village where a single mistake can make you sick for weeks. Stay with me and you will see why a modern person would struggle to survive even one day, let alone 24 hours. Inside a medieval hut, the air hangs thick with smoke and the stench of damp earth. Walls of wattle and daub, sticks woven with clay, leak wind and rain with every storm. The floor is bare dirt, trampled by boots and hooves alike. Livestock sleep indoors for warmth, sharing fleas and droppings with their human hosts. In the corner, a wooden bucket serves as a chamber pot. With no plumbing, waste piles up until someone hauls it outside, usually under the cover of darkness. Most mornings, the bucket's contents are dumped in a shallow pit behind the house, or tossed onto the nearest heap of refuse. Rain carries the runoff through the yard, pooling in muddy ruts and feeding the vegetable patch. In towns, the problem multiplies. Rows of houses pressed together, each with their own cesspit dug a few feet from the door. These pits fill quickly, especially in summer. When the stench becomes unbearable, a gong farmer is paid to empty them, usually at night, when the risk of neighbors noticing is lowest. His job is simple but brutal. Climb into the pit, shovel out the waste, and haul it away by cart, often to be spread on nearby fields. The work is so foul that gong farmers live apart from the rest of the town, shunned for the smell that clings to their skin and clothes. Evidence from 14th century York tells the rest of the story. Archaeologists have found whipworm eggs in nearly every cesspit they have opened, proof that human waste contaminated food and water at every turn. Whipworm, roundworm, and tapeworms pass easily from hand to mouth, thriving in kitchens where no one has ever seen a bar of soap. Open drains run through the streets, carrying offal and dung straight past the front door. In the heat of summer, flies swarm and multiply, landing on everything that might be eaten. The result is a body under siege. Every meal risks another dose of parasites. Diarrhea, cramps, and chronic malnutrition become routine, sapping energy that is already in short supply. For a modern visitor, a single day in this environment is a crash course in medieval pathogens. The immune system, untested by such constant exposure, buckles quickly. Before the first hour of fieldwork even begins, the odds of infection are already stacked high. Filth is not just an inconvenience, it is a daily hazard, woven into every breath, every bite, every step. Imagine being expected to work from before sunrise until after sunset, with no breaks, and your body paying the price. Could you survive 24 hours in medieval conditions? This is what most modern people would quickly discover, and the answer is far from obvious. Survive. A peasant's day in the fields began before sunrise, not with a gentle stretch, but with the weight of expectation. The Lord's land demanded to be plowed, weeded, or reaped, and every able body was pressed into service. Expectation. The scythe, swung in rhythmic arcs, carved through dew-soaked grass for hours on end. Each motion burned through energy. Modern measurements put scything at 6 to 8 times the resting metabolic rate. For a 70-kilogram adult, that means burning over 500 calories every hour just to keep the blade moving. The work rarely paused. A single acre of hay might take a person half a day, with only a crust of bread and a swallow of ale to break the monotony. When the hay was down, the bundles often weighing 20 to 40 kilograms had to be gathered and hauled to storage. This was not a single trip, but a relay of lifting, carrying, and stacking, each load straining the back and shoulders. Carrying heavy sacks over uneven ground cost another 400 to 600 calories per hour, a pace that would leave most modern office workers gasping after the first circuit. Plowing meant guiding a team of oxen across muddy, rutted fields. The plow stuck in the earth, demanding constant force to keep it straight. Even with animal help, the effort pulled another 350 to 450 calories from the body every hour. The soil itself fought back, clinging to boots, soaking through homespun wool, chilling feet and hands in spring and autumn. In summer, the sun beat down without mercy. In winter, the cold seeped through every layer, and the only way to stay warm was to keep moving. Women and children joined in, stooping to weed for 6 to 8 hours at a stretch. The repetitive motion of hand-hoe weeding, bent at the waist, drew another 300 to 500 calories per hour. Threshing grain in the barn, swinging a flail to separate kernels from chaff, was no easier. The task was relentless, the rhythm broken only by the need to catch breath or wipe sweat from the eyes. At the end of a 10 or 12-hour workday, a peasant might burn through 3,000 to 5,000 calories, twice what a sedentary modern adult consumes. But the day's rations rarely matched the output. The result was a daily deficit, a debt paid in muscle and bone. For a modern visitor, the mismatch between calories eaten and calories burned would become clear by midday. Glycogen stores already low from the morning's thin pottage would run dry. Shakiness, confusion, and muscle fatigue would set in long before the sun dipped behind the hedgerows. There was no option to stop. The fields did not forgive missed work. Mistakes such as dropping a bundle, lagging behind the team, or leaving a row unweeded meant fines or public shaming. For the medieval peasant, exhaustion was a constant companion. For a modern body, untrained and unacclimated, collapse was not a threat but an inevitability. Every hour of labor added to the growing deficit, setting the stage for breakdown before the day was done. Imagine stepping out of a modern house and into a medieval field, and not lasting until sunset. Heart pounding at 170 beats per minute, sweat mixing with grime, the modern body starts to unravel by midday. Glycogen, the stored fuel in muscles and liver, runs dry after 2 to 4 hours of relentless scything, hauling, or plowing. For anyone used to elevators and ergonomic chairs, the crash is sudden and absolute. Hands tremble, vision blurs. The brain, desperate for glucose, begins to falter. Simple tasks, lifting a hay bundle or steering a plow, become impossible puzzles. A wave of nausea rises, the world narrowing to a tunnel edged with white. This is not just fatigue. It is a system-wide failure. Blood sugar drops below safe levels, triggering hypoglycemia. Muscles, starved of quick energy, start cannibalizing themselves for fuel. The body pulls amino acids from its own tissue, breaking down what little strength remains. Heart rate spikes again, trying to compensate, but the effort only deepens the spiral. At 160, even 180 beats per minute, the heart strains to deliver oxygen that never seems to be enough. On a modern treadmill, this would trigger alarms. In a medieval field, it means falling behind and risking punishment or public shame. Shakiness gives way to confusion. Directions from others sound distant or garbled. A misstep with a sickle or a stumble in the furrows brings real danger. A twisted ankle, a sliced palm, a blow to the head. Without reserves of fat or protein to draw on, the body has no backup plan. Sweat soaks through coarse wool, but there is no relief. The air is thick with pollen and dust. Each breath a struggle. Dizziness intensifies. Muscles spasm, refusing to cooperate. The urge to sit down, to stop just for a moment, becomes overwhelming. But there is no pause. The work continues, and the deficit grows. By early afternoon, the body's warning lights are flashing. Core temperature creeps upward, fueled by exertion and the sun's glare. Dehydration sets in, blood thickening, heart laboring to push it through narrowed vessels. Any attempt to eat more pottage or stale bread only adds to the cramping and discomfort. The gut, already stressed, cannot process the load. For a medieval peasant, this was the background noise of survival. For a modern visitor, it is the edge of collapse. Glycogen is gone, muscles burn, the mind wanders. Each step is a negotiation with pain. The immune system, weakened by energy shortfall and constant exposure, now stands exposed to every parasite and pathogen in the air, water, and soil. This is the tipping point, the moment when the modern body, stripped of its comforts and reserves, gives out. By the time the sun begins to dip, the door is open for infection, injury, or worse. The clock on survival has started to run out. Imagine a single cut in the wrong place, thus with no ambulance, no emergency room, no antiseptic. Could you survive 24 hours in a world without modern medicine? The answer starts in the field. A scythe slips. The blade bites deep into a palm, blood welling fast. In a modern world, this means antiseptic, stitches, a tetanus shot. In a medieval field, it means a race against time and infection. The nearest help is a barber surgeon, a man with a kit of knives, a jar of wine, and a belief in balancing bodily humors. His tools are sharp, but his knowledge is centuries behind germ theory. The wound is washed with whatever is at hand, sometimes ale, sometimes pond water. If the bleeding will not stop, he heats a poker in the fire and presses it to the skin. The smell of burning flesh is part of the cure. Cautery by boiling oil or red-hot iron is the standard, not the exception. Anesthetics are unknown. Pain is proof the soul is still anchored to the body. The shock alone can kill, even before infection sets in. In the days when famine stalked every village and the Black Death swept through, wounds were only the beginning. A simple scratch could fester in the heat, turning red and swollen by nightfall. By morning, fever and delirium might set in. Without antibiotics, the body's only defense is its own battered immune system, already weakened by hunger and parasites. Even a minor injury could spiral into sepsis. Guy de Chauliac, the great surgeon of the age, described the process. Probe the wound, cut away the dead flesh, then pour in boiling oil to drive out the corruption. Survival rates were grim. For the plague, death came to 30%, sometimes 50% of those struck. There was no rescue, no hospital waiting with clean sheets and IV drips. Collapse in the field meant being carried home if you were lucky. More often, it meant being left where you fell. The theory behind every treatment was as old as Galen. Balance the four humors, bleed the hot, purge the cold, cut away the black bile. A fever was not an infection, but an excess of yellow bile, to be drained with a lancet or cooled with bitter herbs. Surgeons followed the rules of the humors as faithfully as any priest followed the liturgy, but the body, already reeling from malnutrition and exhaustion, had no reserves left. In this world, a single mistake, a slip of the sickle, a festering blister, could end a life before the sun set again. Imagine stepping into a village courtroom with no rights, no appeals, and a bailiff waiting to enforce the law. In Wakefield, Yorkshire, the manor court met regularly to dispense justice. The records, scratched onto parchment, reveal a system where every misstep carried a price. A peasant caught poaching a rabbit after curfew could expect a fine, but for repeat offenders or those who challenged the Lord's authority, the punishment turned physical. The rolls from the 1330s record a man whipped in public for stealing grain. The lashes meant less to draw blood than to remind the village of its boundaries. Fines for drawing blood in a fight, for trespassing, or for missing a day's labor appear again and again. Rarely do the records mention mercy. For the poorest, unable to pay, the threat of the stocks or a night in the cold manor cell was always close. Justice was not blind. The manor court operated as both judge and enforcer, its decisions shaped by the need to keep the fields worked and the rents paid. A broken rule, whether wandering animals, a missed plowing, or a rumor of theft, risked swift retribution. There was no appeal, no outside authority to soften the blow. For crimes that threatened the order of things, the court could escalate to public humiliation or even banishment. In towns, the stocks stood in the market square, a warning to all. The ordeal system, hot iron and cold water, had faded by this period, replaced by oaths and the testimony of neighbors, but the memory of trial by ordeal lingered. The threat of divine judgment, whether real or ritual, kept people in line as much as the lash. Today, the idea of punishment by whipping or public shaming is almost unthinkable. Legal systems now emphasize rehabilitation, privacy, and rights. But in medieval England, the law was a tool for survival, not fairness. Modern experiments like virtual reality recreations of medieval trials let volunteers experience the anxiety of standing before the court, their fate decided by custom and necessity. The lesson is sharp. In a world without safety nets, society finished what hunger and disease began. For anyone used to due process and second chances, the weight of medieval justice would land as heavily as any blow from the bailiff's whip. Imagine stepping into the past for 24 hours. Would you survive? Comfort shields us from realities our ancestors faced every hour, realities that shaped bodies, minds, and communities for survival. Today, most of us could not endure the relentless exposure, labor, and disease that defined medieval life. As technology softens hardship, our resilience rewrites itself in different ways. The next great challenge may not test our bodies, but how prepared we truly are when comfort disappears. Thank you for watching.